Mindfulness is not a static field. It is dynamic, and innovations are happening all around us every day. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. My name is Ted Meissner. Glad you could be here. And there is so much interesting work being done in mindfulness these days. And not just scientific research, but different ways in which mindfulness is meeting different kinds of activities that we do every day. The Mindfulness Innovation Awards are a way to recognize and share that with others. So, before we get started with our conversation of the founder of those Innovation Awards, if you would please like and subscribe. When you do that, when you hit those buttons, it just takes a little tap. You help others to find these. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And let's begin our conversation today.
Our guest today is Vin Harris. Vin, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Ted. Nice to be here with you.
It was so nice to be able to spend just a little bit of time with you at the retreat at Omega Institute a month and a half, 2 months ago, and just being able to talk with you about what we're going to be chatting about today. I'm so excited to do that. But the first thing that I want to hear from you, maybe for the listeners, is maybe you could tell the story of what drew you into this orbit of mindfulness in the first place and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, okay, Ted, yeah. Well, I guess it's a long story. As you get older, the story gets longer. But how I ended up here really was, it was part of the hippie generation. And I became interested in Buddhism and specifically Tibetan Buddhism. And without any internet or Facebook or anything else, myself and my pals gravitated towards Samye Ling, which is a Tibetan Buddhist centre in southwest Scotland, where Trungpa Rinpoche and his friend Akon Rinpoche started the first Tibetan Buddhist centre in the West. And I thought I was going for a couple of weeks, but it's like 50 years, 50 years since. So I lived as a member of the community and helped to build a temple. And then we have a family, so we built a house down the river from there. I still live there. And I had a very successful business, a woodworking business, that kind of grew out of the work I did on the monastery. And I always felt that, well, one of my friends, he jokes with me, he says, oh, you know, there's the monk who sort of sold his Ferrari. He says, you're the monk who bought a Porsche. The other way around. But I always felt that having that grounding in practice in my early 20s and throughout that time really helped me in my work. And running a small business, it's got its own particular stresses, you know. And I've always been an entrepreneur, never had a job, but I thrive on it. And I thought that, you know, that the practice background was something really instrumental in that. I didn't particularly want to become an evangelist Buddhist. I don't think there is such a thing. But I did feel that it would be great to share the benefits of meditation with others. And then a friend of mine, Professor Rob Nairn, who's died now, at Samye Ling, we kind of started a mindfulness project to get people to work through their own practice and then working through mindfulness to make it more accessible to others. So that's really the main story of how I got involved in mindfulness and starting to teach others and coach other people.
Great. Thank you for the overview. And I know it can be difficult to just condense so much of one's life into a few sentences. So appreciate you doing that. And let's move into our main topic for today, innovations in mindfulness. If you could tell us what that is and how it got started.
Yeah, it's, you know, I was reflecting back on this today, and I think, as I said, I've always been an entrepreneur, but I'm not particularly interested in money. It's just, I like the process of generating ideas and creating opportunities for myself and other people. And even since I was a kid, I was always doing that. And then, you know, in the early days of Samye Ling, I was always entrepreneurial, but, you know, sort of did work to buy the machines to build the monastery, that kind of thing. And some other pretty major projects, making films and all sorts of stuff. And then when I was teaching mindfulness and mentoring and supervising people, you know, it started to strike me that some people just had the practice, decided they wanted to teach, and naturally found an outlet for that. But a lot of people don't. And I think within the whole mindfulness field or the industry, whatever you're going to call it, there's this possibility of a growing kind of resentment and disappointment that people, but this heartfelt wish to share their treasure, you know, what they've got from mindfulness, they want to share it with others, and they just don't find an outlet. So I wanted to help with that, really. And the earliest one of this was a friend of mine. I often say a friend of mine, she's dead now as I get older, but we ran sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek course called Enlightened Enterprise, where we kind of shared the principles of enterprise so that people could do business, you know, and particularly mindfulness teaching, that felt like an expression of their practice rather than in contradiction or a compromise to their practice, you know. And I just, from there, the interest in innovation grew, really. And I saw the need for it.
So what is the organization? How did that get started? I know there is a field book and it's had recent updates too. How do we get into that?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So the ideas that I've been having, you know, I wanted to, but yeah, I really needed to help people to find their way into this, sharing the treasure. I'll tell you where that expression comes from, if I may, Ted. It's kind of from the hero's journey. I've often sort of taught this principle that people set off on their mindfulness journey, and it's like a hero's journey. They leave the everyday world behind, either driven by a crisis or by a sense there's more to it than this. And then they kind of enter this new world, and they have friends and mentors and support and usually magic. You know, when you ask people where your journey started, it just comes out of nowhere. Books jump off the shelf from random connections, you know. And they face challenges, and then they go into this kind of innermost cave situation where they see that actually I'm all right. I'm all right as I am. And there's this sense of inner freedom. And then the magic happens that they say, do you know, nobody ever says, I'm going to keep this to myself. To me, it's an expression of basic human goodness that they want to share it with others. But how do they find a way to do that stays true to their insight, but the world doesn't think they're nuts? You know, so, and wanting people to be able to share their treasure. So I was aware of an organization called the Mindfulness Initiative. They're amazing people. Look them up on the internet. And they in, I think it was 2014, they created a UK all-parliamentary party report on mindfulness called the Mindful Nation UK. And it was them that had created the field book, which was first published in 2019. And I came across this, the field book for mindfulness innovators, and it really resonated with a lot of the ideas that I had about innovation and how mindfulness could develop. It was recognizing the fact that we need to be true to the great work that's been done by all the major players and great people in the field, but we also need to reach more people. We've got to make mindfulness more accessible. And you can't sort of claim, well, John Kabat-Zinn did this research and I've invented a 2-hour mindfulness course and it's the same. You know, so the field book really took this idea that this warp and the weft, there's the essence of the practice running through it, but then there's the possibility of seeing particular needs and having particular insights and personal and professional experience that you could bring to it, and people could create new work. So I was really struck by that, but I was also, as quite a practical person, just as an individual, you know, if anything, I was working on behalf of the trust that I started with my wife, the Partner Trust. I thought, that's okay, but I think whilst the Mindfulness Initiative needs to sort of stay back from action, you know, they're a kind of thought leader in the field, bringing social policy and inner practice and together, I wondered if we could take half a step further towards being an influencer. And so the idea came out of the blue, actually, to have this Innovations in Mindfulness Awards. And it's kind of partly autobiographical, because in the development of my own business, I won a bunch of awards, as best small business. And I got sent, once got sent on this by the TV company. We went to Los Angeles and made a movie about visiting other small businesses and stuff. But I was aware of the publicity it gave us and the focus that it gave us. So I was thinking, I wonder if we could create something that would build in that way for people. And so what we wanted to do with the awards was to celebrate all these amazing people out there in the field doing great work. And we'll give your listeners a link to the website, and they can see short videos of some of them. But also, I think we wanted to encourage other people to put it on the map. And so just pretty randomly, I got put in touch with Jamie Bristow, who is one of the founding directors of Mindfulness Initiative, and pitched the idea to him. And he didn't think I was crazy, which was quite nice. And so then with other people within their organization, we kind of came up with this idea. And Menka, one of the main editors of the fieldbook, I got to work with her as well, which has been a great privilege. So we developed the awards in 2022, and we just thought we'd better test the idea. So we had some financial prizes, which weren't that hefty, but I always knew it was going to be the publicity and the other things that had come from it for people that was going to help. And we drafted the application form in such a way that it kind of steered people towards the best practice ideas in the field book. So it's a kind of way of steering people, if you like. One of my kind of business gurus, Peter Drucker, has this thing that you should never ask people to do a report that it isn't intrinsically useful and helps them to do their own job. So we wanted to help people just in the fact of applying. And that's worked. People have loved it. They said, I really got something from looking at my own enterprise in that way. And then we got on board a bunch of great judges. They're really well-known people in the UK who said, they would give their credibility to the judging process. And then we had an awards ceremony down in London. And it was so not like the Oscars, it was like a family gathering sitting around the fire, and the people brought participants from their courses along with them, gave everyone a voice, and it was really moving. And it worked, particularly the finalists, they've got so much benefit from it. It's launched them into all sorts of new activity. A lot of them and the other applicants kind of struck up mentoring relationships with us, which has been great. Everybody that applied, there's nearly 40 people, all got individual feedback and the opportunity for a phone call. Not many took that, but again, we really wanted it to be a way of connecting and helping people rather than it being competitive. And we decided we didn't want to do it every year. So that was the first year, 2022. And then last year we spent kind of building our own resources. So separate from the Mindfulness Initiative, we set up a website called innovationsinmindfulness.org, which has got three aspects that have evolved. We've got, as you referred to, an update of the field book, free. Everybody can just search it, read it, work with it. Really recommend it. So many great resources in it. And it was updated into electronic form, but also we've updated case studies and reflecting sort of the Zoom world that we've got and all sorts of things. So it's a great update. We also kind of created a community section where there's kind of blogs and things that people can write, and that's starting to emerge. And then we had the next, the history of the awards, and then the launch of the next award. And so in 2024, we're in the midst of the judging process, and the awards will be given in October this year.
Got it. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I have my own thoughts about this, but wondering about yours, is why innovation is so important within the field of mindfulness. Why does that matter so much?
Yeah, okay, thanks. I think it matters. I could look at it in two ways. In one way, I think it's that it's pretty well known that mindfulness does kind of attract white, well-educated, middle-class people. There's nothing wrong with that. We all need help. But how's it going to reach more people? How's it going to be more accessible? So it's the drive for me, really, is to make it more accessible in the most wide sense of the word, not just because of exclusion or inequality. Sometimes just we need to find a way to present mindfulness in a way that is going to resonate with people's experience. I do mindfulness coaching with golfers. You couldn't do what you would do on a normal 8-week course. You got to talk their language while staying true to it, for example, but really driven by accessibility. But then and I think maybe to add to that, I probably don't think that is the job of the major training organizations. I think, they kind of need to embed people with the core program and to really get mindfulness into their own lives and establish a daily practice. I think it's going to be the job of the graduates from those programs. And so that the other aspect then of why I'm a huge fan of innovation is that if you start in a small enterprise, you kind of need to do something that isn't being done. Because why? It's a crowded marketplace. So someone who trains as a mindfulness teacher, this heartfelt wish to share their treasure, as we talked about, they can't just go and put an advert on Facebook, or, hey, new mindfulness teacher on the block, competing with everything else that's out there. So the innovation really encourages people to find their niche, to find their unique contribution. What is it they've got that's special? What have they learned that's special? And also, if they use that professional and personal networks, they can bring that kind of credibility with them. So it's not changing mindfulness. Mindfulness is what it is, And John Kabat-Zinn in particular has been magnificent the way he's held that line, the simplicity, the integrity of the practice. But it's in how we present it to people, how we share it, help them find it themselves. And I guess that I will say this, it does start to feel within the mindfulness field that it's getting more and more difficult to find enough people to do courses. And if the teaching organizations continue to just say, we'll teach teachers and that's going to be their problem, that to me is bordering on pyramid selling. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it is. And there doesn't seem to be anybody doing much about, let's give the people that have become great practitioners, great teachers, let's give them these missing skills and encourage them to be innovative and a bit more entrepreneurial. If they don't make money, I don't care at all. It's not about money. It's about being creative.
Vin, I'm wondering about what are the innovations within mindfulness, like what you've been talking about? What are some more things that you've seen that are really exciting for you? We have this opening up and this flourishing of people being able to find their voice and their spot.
Yeah.
And what else? There's more to it than that.
More to it than
just finding their own voice. There's more innovation and ways in which that can show up. And I'm wondering what some things are that are your mind and heart.
Yeah. So it was finding a way to translate the principles of mindfulness into golfers' experience. So I said to them, well, Everyone talks about being present, staying one shot at a time. Does anyone practice being present? Okay, then you've got them. That's an immediate connection. So we broke that down into intention, attention, and attitude. The old pillars of mindfulness, really, and they all really resonated with them. And I worked with a friend of mine who's a professional kind of inner game coach. That took off. And then, but there are much better examples. I mean, become a friend now, Luke Doherty, I think you met. He was the winner of the Innovation Awards. And Luke was an athlete, he was a rugby player. And he kind of admits himself that he struggled with kind of sitting still, neglecting this sort of physical athlete within in order to be mindful. And he connected with young kids, and in particular kids in the East End of London. It's a pretty tough area. And partnered up with boxing gyms, which in the UK, I don't know about the US, is a well-proven route out of trouble for young guys particularly. And he invented this method of bringing non-contact boxing and mindfulness together. And so what he was really doing was bringing the body and the mind together, introducing vigorous movements. So he kind of really understood what it was that was why people wouldn't be able to connect, and he found a way to help them connect. And then there were other people involved with the awards, with the LGBTQ movement. People just feeling outsiders, not feeling in their own place and being welcomed. I think it's really important when people come to a mindfulness group, they have a sense of belonging. They feel at home rather than having to fit in. Or as my friend Menkish put it, you want to be in a place where you get to choose the music. You're not just invited to dance, you get to choose the music, right? And another couple of really good friends who, people of colour, they were often the only people of colour in the room. And they went off and started groups that really brought some of the African heritage, these concepts of Ubuntu, I am because we are, brought that into their mindfulness teaching. And listening to some of their graduates, it's the only time I've really felt that I belonged here, And then other people working with chronic pain and being referred again in really poor area, one of the poorest boroughs of London. And they were very creative in the way they partnered with health professionals. So there's the finding their own voice. There's the feeling that they get it. They understand it from the inside. They had a really great practice themselves, and then they were creative, found creative solutions. They didn't reinvent mindfulness, but they really made it accessible.
Yeah. Vin, any parting encouragements for the viewers? Anything you'd like to share?
I think one of the messages that came through from, it's a privilege for me to just read the applications. It's a blast, I have tears in my eyes sometimes when I read them. Is that people kind of sometimes from the outside think, wow, he's done amazing work. Oh, she's got this amazing, huge project. They forget that it starts with one small step. And all of the stories I've heard, people say, actually, they go through this process. They kind of look at the field that they're in, and they kind of ask themselves, well, what's wrong? What could be better? And then they ask themselves, what can I do about it? And they take a really small step, and then you just never know where the journey is going to take you. And I think Joseph Campbell again says, when you do that, you follow your bliss, people come into the field of your bliss and help you and become part of that dance together. And I do think some magic happens when people do that. So it's a really exciting journey rather than just sitting feeling, oh, nobody's interested in what I've got to offer. Put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in the position of, why has mindfulness changed your life? What do you wish you knew earlier? And share it with others and share it from the heart.
Well said. For those who are watching or listening, we're going to have a link to Innovations in Mindfulness. And our guest today, Vin Harris. Vin, thanks for being here. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks very much.
Great appreciation to Vin for encouraging mindfulness innovation. That's what makes a difference, that this is a field that grows and is dynamic and alive. And remember, if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. It does make a difference and helps others to find this podcast. And remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can, and I'll see you the next time on Mindfulness Voyage.